recording. All right, so I am Jennifer Smith with the Wisconsin After School Network. Again, thank you all for joining us this morning. If you are comfortable having your camera on, we always appreciate the visual feedback of seeing other people in the space with us. If you are not able to do that, then we also understand that sometimes that's just not practical in our environments. But if you're comfortable doing so, we do really appreciate that. I'm going to have Linda introduce herself to all of you before we jump in.
Hello, I'm Linda Isley, and I have been working in the out-of-school time field for more than 30 years and have been with the Wisconsin After School Network since it began. And through all those many years, I have not lost my passion or my enthusiasm for after-school programs, what their importance is, and what their potential is. So I look forward to engaging with you in this important topic. So that's about as much as I'm going to say right now, but I'll turn it over to Jen to introduce herself.
So again, everybody, I'm Jennifer Smith with the Wisconsin After School Network. I've been working in this space for the last 9 years, providing professional development and technical assistance to after school and out of school time programs. And we're going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves in the chat. So if you can include your name, your program, where you're located in the state. I think it's always interesting for us to see where people are, and maybe there's someone in your neck of the woods that you might want to connect with, and being able to see where everybody is located kind of helps to facilitate that process and that connection. And then, is project-based learning something that is new to you, or something that you are familiar with? So maybe you've heard about it, you know a little bit about it, or this is a whole new subject. And in any case, we appreciate you joining us today. So we'll take a minute to let people kind of put that in the chat. Hi, Abby. Christine, Sam. Nice. All right. So it seems like there's some familiarity with a few of you around project-based learning. A couple people, it's new. I'm familiar, but not good at training staff on it. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, Girl Scouts. Nice. Welcome. So PBL is familiar.
Well,
oh, someone's in that first year. Yeah.
Nice assortment of people. It's going to be fun to get their thoughts and engagement with us. So
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, for introducing yourselves. We'll continue to kind of watch the chat as people add more information, but we're happy to have all of you with us. So this training is really focused on 21st century, although project-based learning can be implemented anywhere. But we're going to take just a couple minutes to kind of ground in 21st century programming and, kind of reflect on what that is all about, especially as we celebrate the 25th anniversary of 21st century programs. So that's a pretty long time that these programs have existed and have been supporting kids and families in their communities. So the foundational purpose of 21st century programs was really to provide this idea of academic enrichment to kids outside of the school day, in a way that complements their school activities and what they're learning during the school day, but doing it through an array of supportive activities, right? So not really replicating what's happening during the school day, but trying to support what's happening during the school day. And the 21st century programs are really targeting schools or communities that may have high poverty or low performance in their area, right? So we're really targeting specific populations with the 21st century grants. And when we think about academic enrichment, the 21st century programs have something called guiding principles. And academic enrichment is one of those guiding principles. And again, it's really this idea of activities that complement but do not replicate the school day, right? So we are not going for more school after school. We are really looking at innovative, fun, and engaging ways to complement what is happening during the school day in our after school and out of school time spaces. In addition to academic enrichment as a guiding principle, we can really think about incorporating other guiding principles in some of these high quality practices. One being voice, choice, and leadership. So when we think about positive youth development and that idea of youth voice is really powerful, and project-based learning is going to help us to really incorporate that youth voice into what's happening in our program spaces, offering a diversity of programming. So there's more than one way to approach learning, and really thinking about how each of us have strengths and interests in the ways that we go about learning new things. And so we really want to have a variety of opportunities and approaches for kiddos in our program spaces. And then incorporating social and emotional learning into what we're doing. And so really, I think about social and emotional learning as those skills that we really need to navigate school and work and relationships, right? They're just lifelong skills that are going to help us to be able to interact and thrive in whatever space that we may find ourselves. So all of those guiding principles really can be addressed through project-based learning.
Project-based learning. Project-based learning is not new. If any of you were 4-H members as kids, you know that you were doing project-based learning. What is new is how it is being implemented in a lot of different venues. Project-based learning starts with kids' interests and builds their knowledge and skills through an active inquiry process, asking questions, seeking answers, offering solutions, and trying to really share what we know and what we want to learn. It's grounded in the real world. It takes a multidisciplinary approach so that it's critical thinking, communication skills, collaboration, and all of those kinds of things. It basically is a deeper dive into learning. So we all do projects. So how do projects differ from project-based learning? We've got a short video here that we'd like to kind of show you to kind of differentiate the difference between project and project-based learning. So Jen, if you will start our video, then we can kind of talk about it afterward as to what those differences are.
Is everybody seeing the video on the screen now? I think I'm sharing my screen and not the PowerPoint. Yes, thank you.
Today, we're going to start a new project.
Teachers and their students have been doing projects since forever.
3, 2, 1,
More and more are doing project-based learning. So what's the difference?
That's a great question. Let's start off by reviewing.
Projects are typically limited in scope and duration. They're a good way for students to work with content they've already learned.
Flip to the paper that says sundial.
In project-based learning, students learn through the project.
Interesting.
They address a real-world problem, a driving question, one that can't be Googled and has no single right answer.
We were talking about how can we prepare for Atlanta's change in weather.
Students have voice and choice in PBL, some input into how they'll answer the driving question.
Does anybody think they might have some ideas?
So they gain ownership of their learning.
So those questions led to our investigation.
They collaborate in a process of sustained inquiry. lasting more than a few days.
We've got a whole lot of work to do.
They reflect on their learning through discussions, formative assessments, and critiques of their peers' work.
We are going to take a look at one of your friends' work today.
And then revise their work based on those reflections.
On the sheet. Okay, there we go. We got it.
You can
High five!
The final product is shared with an audience beyond the classroom. Maybe that's professionals in a related field,
I appreciated how thoughtfully you responded.
or it could be the kids in the class next door. When students spend an hour exploring the 4 forces of flight by crafting a Mars lander out of paper, that's a project. When they spend a month simulating a Mars landing, analyzing the math and physics at work, and discussing their work with real aerospace engineers,
And it sounds like you've done a little bit of testing to see if that works.
Yeah.
that's project-based learning.
Capiche?
Research shows that rigorous PBL can result in higher engagement and deeper content knowledge.
You're rocking it. Keep it up, okay?
Learn more about project-based learning at edutopia.org.
Thanks, Jen. Just a minute. What kind of from either you can unmute or put in the chat box, what kind of things stood out to you as the difference between project and project-based learning? What are some of the key differences that you noted? And for some of you that have already been working in project-based learning, you already know a lot of these, what the differences are, but kind of share some of your thoughts. And you're welcome to unmute and share.
If you see some in the chat, Linda, student-driven is one comment. PBL is not outcome-based. The learners are the drivers of the work.
Great.
The instructor may not even know what the end outcome is going to be.
And generally, they don't know what the outcome is going to be. I think that's the beauty of project-based learning. So, so when we look, these are some of the main differences. And I think it really goes back to that engagement of and being based on what children want to know and what children want to learn. So Jen, if you want to talk then a little bit about some of the more characteristics of the project-based learning.
Absolutely. So when we're thinking about project-based learning, we're thinking about real problems that require time in order to process and problem solve, right? So as the video indicated, there's not a single simple answer. Most things in life are complicated. And so having a real question that kids are investigating and thinking about and trying to solve is one of the essential characteristics or kind of the starting point for project-based learning. The idea that kids are driving the topics or the content is another important element of project-based learning. So it's not the adults really saying this is what we're going to be doing, but it's a question that's really derived from curiosities that kids have and that they might be sharing in the context of your after-school program. Maybe you hear kids talking about a current event or something that's happening that they're aware of and curious about. And then that's really a way to tap in to their interest and bring that into the space of project-based learning to come up with a question and help kids really learn about and investigate whatever it is that they are curious about. So that idea of learner-driven is pretty important. The idea also that it covers a variety of content or topic areas. So it's not we're just doing math academic enrichment, right? But project-based learning can incorporate math, but it can also incorporate science. It also can incorporate science or English. It also is going to incorporate some of those skills that are not content specific, like problem solving, analyzing information, engaging in observation and taking notes. All of those are really important skills that help us build on our academic competencies that can be incorporated into this whole concept of project-based learning. And then again, some of those kind of group dynamics, the skills around collaboration, communication, are some of those essential skills that help us navigate life. And this is a great platform for kids to be able to practice those skills in kind of a safe and structured environment. And then the last element of project-based learning is that there is typically a culminating activity once kids have kind of gone through this inquiry process. So either they have created some content that they share, maybe they've created an event in which they invite people to attend or participate, but there is usually a more public kind of shared event that culminates this whole process of inquiry and learning that the kids have participated. All right. So we actually have another video, and we're going to skip the first part of the video because they really talk about this research project that they were engaged in. And we're going to skip to where there is a classroom of kids. So this example is school-based. But the principles and the elements are the same. So we're going to share this video as an example of project-based learning and then kind of talk about what aspects of those characteristics you notice in watching this video of these second graders who are engaged in a project-based learning activity. All right, let me see if it has me advanced. No.
Out of the gate.
So this morning, we are going to go on our field trip to Hawthorne Park.
My name's Aaron Phillips. I teach second grade at Grayson Elementary. We are doing the Civics and Government unit of Project Place. We started the unit by taking a field trip.
Hi, guys.
We go to a park and kind of just discover the park and look at its strengths and weaknesses. All the kids were engaged, all the kids were interested. That is when they can shine, and you can see a total difference in the learning.
It was very exciting for our kids to feel that they had a voice in what could possibly promote change.
Wow! Right away, the driving purpose to improve the park or other public space is established.
All right, let's start heading towards the bus.
Every lesson, there's a direct connection between what students are doing and that ultimate purpose that they have.
So, the ground of the play structure was not safe.
We were writing things that you did not like and you think that you can fix.
You could like fall down. There's no wood chips and the weed barriers are coming out.
Does anybody have any ideas of something we could do?
We could say to the person who made the park to fix the park.
Our hope was that students would see that they're valuable contributing members to a community and they can make a difference.
I wonder if we could try to persuade people in the government to fix something at the park.
We learned how to write a proposal. They got to create posters for the different departments within local government.
So what does the sanitation department do to help citizens?
Helps the environment be clean.
There you go.
Children are curious about the world around them. They're curious about issues in their community and what adults do.
Is this what your group did, Kaylee?
So civic education is really an important part of students becoming functioning citizens who are contributing and are active in their communities.
Make the play area safer.
We took the work and made it into a PowerPoint presentation to ultimately present it to somebody on city council.
Today is the proposing day where we propose to the councilman.
Hi, I'm City Councilman Randy Carter.
We know from research children's writing tends to be stronger when they are writing for an audience beyond school.
Good morning and welcome to Grayson Elementary.
Part of it is that project-based learning conveys high expectations for students.
Our class suggested adding more wood chips.
As much as possible, we want to give kids an opportunity to write for an audience that's not just their teacher, but maybe members of their local community, their state, their nation, or the world.
Councilman Carter, we hope you enjoyed our hard work.
They were able to show me with pictures and data exactly what the problems are. I will act upon their proposal immediately. Can we say Grayson Gators get things done?
It just makes myself proud that I'm helping the whole community.
Project-based learning gives children of all ages, of all status, of all diversity, an opportunity to have a voice. I see the level of engagement. I see that the learning becomes contagious. And I see that years later, kids come back to me and talk about the projects.
We were excited about conducting this study to be able to really say project-based learning can make a difference in children's achievement at the elementary level. It's a great alternative to traditional approaches to learning.
Oh, yeah!
All right, so let's just take a minute and reflect on what some of those characteristics or what elements of project-based learning you really saw stand out in that example.
People can unmute and just speak up as well as if you want to put something in the chat box. A lot of you seem to be very familiar with the project-based learning, so I think you've picked up a lot on the cues and what is project-based learning characteristics and why it works.
So Sam put in the chat that the kids really identified not only the problem, but also the solutions, right? So they kind of walked through this whole process of fixing up their local playground, and then how are we going to go about doing that, and then actively working to influence change, right, in their community around that problem. Awesome.
One thing that I noticed that I thought was, that's really adorable, and my second thought was like, wow, that was really powerful learning, was at the beginning of the video they featured the little girl that the teacher was saying, you know, what can we do about these problems? And her response was like, well, maybe we can call the person who made this park and tell them to clean it up. Which, having worked with second graders, is such a, somebody's got to be in charge of it, right? Like, just have them do it. And the understanding that came through the process, like all the different parts that are involved in community governance, and just the depth of understanding of like, whoa, this is a heck of a lot bigger than calling the person who made it and telling them to clean it up, was just, you could just really see how the understanding of local.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Sam. And then some of the other comments, you know, the kids presented outside of their school, right? So they invited the councilman to come. So that culminating project we talked about, we saw that happening. They, you know, they made a PowerPoint and they had talking points. And it was student driven, integrating all areas of learning, right, while connecting with outside entities. So the idea that academic enrichment is not, we're designating time today to do something around math, and we're designating time tomorrow to do 20 minutes of silent reading, and then we're going to designate time another day, right? But academic enrichment can be much more engaging, youth-driven, based on their interests, and then incorporate all of those elements. There was math, English, social studies, all of those elements, learning about how their local government works, who do we talk to about fixing this park, all of those pieces happened as part of this project-based learning in a really natural and authentic way. And the kids were fully engaged and invested in that whole process.
Jen, I also think one thing that this shows is that, you know, sometimes we think of this project-based learning is for older kids. And what this really shows is, you know, these are second graders, and just how much of an impact that their thinking changed. And this was really doable for this young of a child. So I think part of what we need to really process too is the applicability of it to all of our age groups that we work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for making that point, Linda. All right, so they also talked a little bit about their research. So that particular project was part of a research project, and they did see gains in the kiddos who participated in those project-based learning opportunities. And there is other research that has been done about project-based learning that really supports the idea that it positively impacts kids when they are able to engage in these types of activities. So youth who participated in project-based learning, when we think about kind of standard measures like academic testing, right? They scored as well or better than their peers, those kiddos who had the opportunity to participate in project-based learning. It's been shown to improve kids' ability to reason and argue clearly, right? Using kind of data, be able to answer conceptual problems and to hypothesize a little bit more accurately. And my favorite data point is that project-based learning really suggests that it helps support kids who don't learn as well in traditional environments, right? So we're really thinking about going back to that guiding principle of a diversity of ways where kids can engage with learning. And so we see that kids who maybe struggle in more traditional settings really are able to find success and make strides when we can implement project-based learning. All right, so Linda, I'm going to turn it over to you to give a bit of a highlight here.
Okay, well, project-based learning is often seen as a four-step process. And as we saw from the video, that it starts with a question. We kind of look at an issue and begin to ask questions. Then we kind of begin to, well, what do we want to learn about it? What's the issue? What is it that we're really concerned about? What's there? So we're kind of trying to really become the inquiry process. And then we go, okay, we've collected all this information, this knowledge, then we begin to find solutions. And then what's going to work? And we use our new information and knowledge to create and ask the children in their proposal that they wanted to present. And then the last part is the culmination of the project. In many ways, that's a presentation. It can even be a musical performance, a dance performance, all kinds of different ways that they can have a culminating project for this. So where do we start? In the exploration phase. And so kind of to help you kind of begin to think of, well, how might I use this in my own program? I love snack time and our meeting times, because those are the times when you can really begin to learn what the kids are thinking about, what their concerns are, what their issues are, and they can begin to kind of draw them out. Then you can begin to ask open-ended questions to open their minds and begin to really delve into something. These are some examples of open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are questions that can't be answered with yes or no. And oftentimes our open-ended questions do not ask why, because sometimes when we say why, that indicates that there is a correct answer. What we're looking for with open-ended questions is the ability to have kids really think about it. And we can get a wide variety of responses. And believe me, working with kids, a lot of times you don't know what that response is going to be. It can be very unexpected. So as we begin to look at that, that's our first step, is to kind of get those questions out to help them form the question that they're going to go from. So then Well, okay, we ask questions. Now, what do we do with those questions? One of the techniques, if you're not familiar with using a lot of the project-based learning, is the KWL system. Originally, it was, what do you know? What do you want to learn? And what did you learn? One of the steps that I always found missing was, how do I find out? So this chart really begins to look at how I can process and begin to work with the students as we go through what the learning process is. Okay, so Jen, the next one then.
All right, thanks, Linda. And I just want to mention that the resources that we're sharing will be housed on the WAN website. So once the 4-part series is complete, any of the items that we're referencing, we will have available. So you can kind of access those all in one location. So we will share that information with you. But as we're sharing these resources, I wanted to make note of that. So when we think about what's happening in our program spaces after school, out of school time, many of the early examples of project-based learning were more school focused. But I think, and I'm hoping that you are all thinking the same thing, that this really fits nicely into the environment that we have curated in our after school and out of school time spaces. So the idea of incorporating positive youth development, which is what many of us are using and focusing on in our program spaces, incorporating kind of that idea of youth voice, right? All of that happens in the context of project-based learning. Thinking about, what do high quality staff interactions look like in our program spaces? The open-ended questions, right? The encouraging conversations, the processing and problem solving are all indicators of high quality staff interaction. That's all happening in the context of project-based learning. We often have significantly smaller ratios in after school and out of school time programming. So kids are able to engage a little bit more easily, and we're maybe a little bit better able to navigate and manage the group because we do often have smaller ratios in our spaces. And we really have informal learning environments. We are not tied to academic standards and curriculum that are, kind of imposed on us that need to be delivered on a timeline. We have much more flexibility in our spaces and much more influence over what is happening in our programs. And so that really lends itself to some freedom in our ability to implement kind of project-based learning and after school. All right, I lost my mouse for a second there. The other aspects that I think are really important is this idea of incorporating some of that academic content or enrichment without losing the fun of what's happening in after school, right? So after school is an informal learning environment. We are very strong in relationship building, those peer relationships, those adult and peer relationships, engaging in interesting and, maybe a little more unique experiences. And so we want to keep that aspect of after school and out of school time going. And project-based learning will allow us and can allow us to really incorporate some of this academic enrichment in a way that's going to stay true to what we already have in our out of school time spaces. And then the other idea of incorporating play, right? Kids learn through play. Play is a way that they practice skills. And so can we incorporate that element as part of this whole process as well, knowing that we do have more flexibility and are in a more informal environment? And then lastly, project-based learning is not prescriptive. It doesn't say you have to do this. And so we are really able to individualize based on our kids, on our program design, what things look like. There's a lot of flexibility in how we implement and how we roll this out in our spaces. And so we can really tailor it to what fits best for our kids and our program. What are their needs and what are their interests? So after school, I think really is a beautiful spot for project-based learning. Linda, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just want to add though, you know, with the example that was through a classroom, there were expectations of the outcome. Kids were also kind of being judged or evaluated on a lot of it. And what's the beauty of having these kind of activities in the out of school time is that we're not judging. We don't have a set list of, did they learn this? Did they learn that? So it's a lot more less prescriptive and it's freer so that we're not judging the outcome. We're not assessing kids' abilities on all this. We're giving them an opportunity to explore learning at their level and in their way. It kind of goes with Piaget's theory of learning, in which kids really direct their learning. So it's a beautiful fit for after school programs because of the flexibility we can offer and the non-judgmental, that kind of the concept of what is informal education. So for me, it's a perfect fit.
So this next slide's yours, Linda, so I'm just going to let you keep going.
Yeah, I can get on my soapbox pretty easy. But you know, when we begin to think about some of this, we look at, okay, why don't I do this? And we can find lots of reasons why we can't do it. So rather than kind of thinking about what we can't time, this is always one of the excuses, reasons that comes up. We have the kids come at varying times, so we have varying schedules. The amount of our time of our program is limited. We've only got 2.5 hours. We have so much other stuff that we need to get into our programs. So sometimes we think, oh, you know, this just isn't possible for us. But one of the things that I'd like to do is kind of just sit back and take small steps. You don't have to start with a big project. Start with a small project-based learning. And it may start actually from something that you're already doing. For example, if you have a community service project that may be adult, you've started it as the adult, but now this may transition into a project-based learning that the kids take over. So you can start small and work with it that way. Another reason that people don't want to do it is the consistency of the kids. I don't have the same kids the same days. We've got different schedules. So how can I can do this, I can start with this group of kids, but no, tomorrow I don't have that same group of kids. So you have to begin to think, well, are there days of the week that work better than others for this type of thing? Can I break this project down into smaller groups that work independently from each other and then kind of coordinate together at the end? So start with what is feasible for you. Another one of it is our mindset. I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't want to change. I like things, okay, I like things the way they are. The other part is that we're used to being the ones that are in charge. And it's our responsibility to assure the learning that happens in our programs. So we're kind of reluctant to introduce this new technique. Another way we can do this then to make it more comfortable for us is to work with one of our coworkers that are within our program, or it can be a community partner that we work with. So you're working with some other people to help you process and go through it as well as the kids are going through it. And you have to want to do it. If this is just really not something you want to do, it's going to be really hard for you to implement it. But think about ways that its benefits. We've talked about a lot of the benefits, the characteristics, why it fits with our after school program. So begin, like we're asking the kids to open their minds, we're asking our staff to open their minds and think of a new way to approach learning for the kids that's more authentic and realistic for them. So take your time, don't start too much that you can't handle. The other beauty that I consider a true bonus is you can step back. You can be a learner with the kids. You don't have to be in charge. You may ask those nice questions of open-ended, but let them take the lead. And when kids start taking the lead, then we begin to have authentic learning, which also does exactly what we want to with what's important to us for having kids develop the knowledge and skills that help them be successful in their lives. So that's exactly why it fits nicely. So just kind of take a step back and think of, well, okay, this may be a barrier, but how do I work around it and find different ways? The other thing is, you know, Jen and others with the After School Network have a lot of resources and can help you in many different ways as you begin to think about a process and a project that's going to work for you. So yes, there are challenges. Yes, there are barriers, but hey, we're good at overcoming barriers. We work in after school programs. All of you have finessed a lot of different things and trying to figure out how things can work within the parameters that you have. So just we can help you with these, and just think about it as a new way, a better way of thinking for the kids.
So we're going to give you a few examples of project-based learning. And I'm going to share two of them with you that were part of a community of practice with 21st century programs that I facilitated pre-COVID, which seems like forever ago. But they were like real examples that programs implemented over the course of the school year. One of them is highlighted on the slide, and that one is the elementary students who learned about their local food pantry. So there's a 21st century program in the Northwoods that a couple times a month the kids would go to the food pantry and would help kind of sort and stack some of the items that were in the pantry. And through the community of practice, we were really talking about how that was like a service project, but it wasn't really service learning or project-based learning. And so how could they really expand what they were already doing, right, in a way that might be meaningful and engage the kids? And so they started having conversations with the staff at the pantry, and the kids started asking questions about who uses the pantry and how much food do you give out. And so that kind of started this whole process of doing a little bit of research and finding out what foods get used up, you know, more quickly than others. What do they really need on a regular basis? Are there times of year that, you know, it's harder on the food pantry than others? And then the kids hosted a food drive and created posters and informational flyers for the community to let them know about the food pantry and what their needs were. That became a project that program was already doing that turned into project-based learning, right? It happened over the course of a number of months. And then the kids kind of developed this whole way to help support that organization in their community. The other one was a group that had a garden area that was given to them as part of their after-school program. And they decided that they had really been hearing a lot about bees and pollinators and how we don't have many of them around anymore, that there is a decline in pollinators. And so the kids kind of went on a journey to learn about pollinators and what kind of plants draw pollinators and what zone are we in. And they worked with a local garden club, and they created a plan for the garden. And they ultimately, by the end of the year, had created a pollinator garden that lived at their program space, right? That the kids had engaged in that whole learning process and ultimately had this garden that they could share with the community and talk about why they chose the plants they did and how it was helping to benefit their local pollinators. So a couple of real examples of programs that kind of implemented, along with some of the other ideas on this slide.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jen, the middle one about the snack, the kids were, here's an example where the kids were just complaining about, this snack is terrible. We don't like it. We're not going to eat it. So, then, okay. So the question becomes, okay, well, what do you think we can do about it? And so the kids, this is a very simple one, because you can just say, okay, what would taste better? What would you like better? And then begin to explore what the options were as far as what they could have for snack, what were some of the limitations as far as cost of snack and all those kind of things. And in a very short time, then they were able to basically talk about nutrition. They understood what the regulations were as to what snack had to include based on regulation. And so then they were actually able to, working with the staff, to basically create snack schedule, snack plans for that. Now, they might not have been able to do it for a long period of time. This could be an example of, well, let's do it for a month. And so that's a simple type of project-based learning example. So again, you don't have to be really a big plan. It can be something small to start with.
So I'm curious if anybody has wheels turning as we're having this conversation. Is anybody thinking about some possible ideas or maybe things that you're already doing that you could, bring into a project-based learning type of format? I think we always learn so much from each other. We all have our own experience, right? Levels of experience and knowledge, and sharing is always a great way to kind of spread that information around. So I'm curious if anybody's having any thoughts right now. You can put it in the chat or in mute. Okay, I think that was my 7 seconds. I like having adequate wait time, but I don't want to put pressure on anybody. Okay, well, I think this is all food for thought, right? For you to kind of take this back and mull it over. And one of the things that I do want to lift up, and it was one of the comments in the chat about, I have an understanding of this, but I really struggle how to share this idea with my staff. And so part of the idea behind this 4-part series is that maybe you can use these videos to share with your staff and have conversations. And this can be a tool for you to help in that process. So you don't have to come up with, how am I going to have this conversation with my staff? But you can utilize the resources that are created here that kind of help you facilitate that, right? That you're not in this on your own. All right, so next Wednesday.
I had a nice comment in here from, I think it's Nancy, about, whoops, I lost it where it was placed on that.
I think that might have been from a while ago, unless it was recent.
Oh no, it was a building of self-esteem in kids by presenting to someone outside of the school. I kind of wanted to bring that comment up because it fits so much of what we're really wanting to do, is building that self-esteem, that sense within kids that they're capable, and that the need for these projects sometimes to be presented to people outside of our school, outside of our, or into our broader community. So I like Nancy's comment there about that self-esteem building.
Sam, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, in the video they talked about Project Place, which sounds like is a pretty well-established curriculum. So I just that in the chat if anybody is interested in checking that out. It looks like they have 4 really well-developed units on history, geography, and a couple other pretty big social studies standards. Obviously designed for in-school time, but honestly would be great inspiration for anybody saying, like, I want to help now.
Thank you, Sam.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so next week, a little foreshadowing, we will be talking about project-based learning and STEM. So today we really covered like the what and the why of project-based learning, kind of a higher level overview of what this is all about. The next 2 weeks, we're really going to be covering more of the how and what this can look like in your program space. And we're going to be using STEM, that'll be next week, and then the arts, which will be the following week, is kind of the vehicle for implementing this idea of project-based learning. And then our last week, we're going to talk about community partnerships and who might exist in your community that might be able to support some of this learning. Kind of the idea of the pollinator garden, they really paired with the gardening club in their community to help kids research and learn about plants and how to create a garden plan, right? So they really partnered with some external organizations in their community to help this process. So we're going to have a conversation about some of those partnerships. All right, so before I let all of you go, we do have an evaluation poll. It's 5 questions. It'll take you 1 minute. We're really hoping that you will take the time to complete that. We always are appreciative of your feedback. If you have questions, you can email us at the Wisconsin After School Network at marshfieldclinic.org. Visit our website. Again, all 4 of these videos will be recorded and posted to YouTube after the series is complete, along with all of the resources housed on our website. So before I launch the poll, any questions for anyone that anyone has before? All right, well, I am going to launch our evaluation poll. If you would take 60 seconds to fill that out, we would very much appreciate it. And hopefully we see all of you next week as we continue to explore the idea of project-based learning. So have a great rest of your week, everyone. We appreciate you being here, and we'll see you again. See you, Abby.